Joining us now is Janet Napolitano. She is the former Department of Homeland Security Secretary and the former governor of Arizona. Welcome, Madam Secretary.
Madam Secretary, I want to start on the about turn, and I'm using quotes for folks at home, that the president seemingly had. The New York Times reporting says President Trump's decision to pause most raids targeting farms and hospitality workers took many inside the White House by surprise. It came after intensive lobbying by his agriculture secretary. They should note many of Trump's top aides, particularly Stephen Miller, have urged a hard-line approach. I think it's important to underscore to our viewers that we have no reporting, no knowledge that says that those raids have, in fact, stopped. For all intents and purposes, they haven't. The president just said they would stop. My question is, you're a former secretary. When I used to be a White House staffer, when the president speaks from any podium and says something that sounds contrary to what you thought the president believed or wanted you to do, what is the proper course of action? What would you have done if you were the secretary and you heard the president say what he did about the raids just last week?
Well, I would have picked up the phone and called the president and said, I want to make sure I understand your direction, because we will carry out what your policy is and make sure you have complete clarity. But, you know, communication both within the administration and then between the administration and state officials and local officials has never been a strong suit.
Secretary Napolitano, I have so many questions for you, but one, I'm curious what you think about sort of this division of labor where you have, this is not how your DHS was set up. This is not how your immigration enforcement was set up. The fact that you have Tom Homan acting as the borders are, the fact that so often I hear people misidentify him as a Secretary of Homeland Security because so much of his portfolio sounds to folks like what the head of DHS would in fact do when she is busy giving press conferences and throwing sitting United States senators out of them. To do what they are saying they want to do, to actually focus on the deportation of violent criminals, not this new definition where criminality is defined by having entered the country without a legal process. What would that actually require, that type of targeted effort?
Well, that type of targeted effort would be something similar to what we did under President Obama, where we focused on those in the country illegally, but who had committed serious crimes, those who were known and well-known gang members, and those who were national security threats. President Obama's deportation numbers were quite robust. In fact, he was called, I think much to his chagrin, the deporter in chief. But the vast majority of those who were deported fell within those priority categories. And I think the vast majority of Americans would agree that those are the right priorities to have. Now we're in a different world. Now it's mass deportation, and there's kind of this arbitrary number. You've got to pick up 3,000 people a day. And that will expand ICE operations throughout the country to all kinds of locations where people work, where they go to church, where they go to school. And that is going to be a massive law enforcement operation. I don't think the American people quite understand what this will mean for them.
Madam Secretary, I'd like you to put on your governor's hat. As a former state official, we can break this down a little bit closer to where people live out their lives every day in terms of their employment and the access they have to vegetables and produce in their grocery stores, brought to you by immigrants from across this nation. And you have Axios reporting the American Immigration Council estimates that unauthorized immigrants make up about 4.6% of the nation's employed labor force. That would amount to more than 7 million people. A recent Department of Ag study estimated that about 42% of America's farm workers were undocumented from 20 to 2022. You also then have the Washington Post telling us the U.S. could lose more immigrants than it gains for the first time in 50 years. A net outflow of migrants could stoke inflation, a risk economists already expect from Trump's tariff policies. It could also renew the type of labor shortages the country experienced during the pandemic. That's a 1-2 punch, and we see it. Governors know it. across the country, even, yes, red state governors who pretend they don't have immigrants or migrants in their states that are providing valuable services, not just in hotel, but in other areas of their economy. Speak to that impact, this idea that what this administration is doing is cutting off our economic hand for the future by this draconian policy today.
Well, immigration it's a complicated subject. It's a tough subject. It's an economic issue. It's a legal issue. It's a law enforcement issue, and it's a values issue. It's all of those rolled into one. And in the United States, we have a complicated immigration history where we've gone through periods of high immigration and periods of high exclusion, different nationalities being excluded depending on who was coming into the country. The Chinese were excluded. There were acts against Italians and Irish, for example. But here's the thing, it's that the immigration population in the United States, throughout the United States, is now highly integrated into our economy and into our communities. And the mass deportation efforts that the administration is propounding, it means really going into all the nooks and crannies of our communities to ferret out people, many of whom live in families where their children are citizens, where they're married to citizens, many of whom have lived here for 10, 12, 15, 20 years, even longer. And that, I think, that reality is now going to become closer into focus for people.
Can we talk about this debate, if you could call it that, about ICE agents and masking? Democratic elected officials and civil rights groups say that the masks allow ICE agents to escape accountability. In some cases, individuals are not even donning ICE paraphernalia. We don't know who the people are who are raiding these businesses or snatching people off the street. Republican elected officials, folks in the administration, as well as leaders of ICE say that it is necessary to protect the agents. What say you as the former secretary?
Yeah, I disagree with the masking. I think, it's not necessary at the breadth at which it is being done. And B, it sends the wrong message. I mean, you don't see other law enforcement agents wearing masks when they're conducting operations. You don't see police or sheriff's deputies or whatever wearing masks. And I think it is more an intimidating factor than a necessary factor. Look, ICE agents occasionally run into dangerous situations. Law enforcement in general runs into dangerous situations on occasion. But to uniformly wear masks all the time for all operations, to me, is inappropriate.